Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today I will break down what I think are perhaps the most solid builds for singles that we can extract from the WTC 2025. And I will also come with some suggested adjustments for the recent FAQ that came into effect after the WTC list submission, so that you can adjust your list for this. In my opinion, the most important pillar of a single player tournament list is the ability to play versus any army. You shouldn't have any auto losses in your matrix, because then it's going to be quite hard for you to win the tournament, and that leaves a lot of things to chance. So do have that in mind, and that's going to be a very common denominator in this list that I've chosen for today. This could also be applied for teams as well, in regards to as to whether you want a more extreme matchup spectrum or if you're prepared to go for a more solid matrix overall. So now I'll move on into the lists. The first list coming out is from Germany, from Grischa Gerwert, who I played last year, and now he's converted to Space Marines as well, and he's playing Space Wolves just as me, but he's chosen the Stormlands Task Force instead, which is more focused on pushing in melee. And as you can see here, he has the Bjorn for additional CP, as well as Ragnar, who's going to go with the Blood Claws for a quick and very punchy unit, as well as 2 Iron Priests. Remember that this is before the nerf, so it's going to work with the Predator Annihilators doubling their amount of shots basically, as well as a Lieutenant and some other trash for early trading and scoring. He's also gone for quite a lot of MSU in the forms of 2 5-man units with Wolfen, as well as the Phoenician Wolves that are just very, very cheap screening. I think the breakout unit here is the 2 6-mans of Thunderwolf Cavalry that gets advance and charge from the detachment and can also make use of all their stratagems in the forms of lands, as well as auto advance 9 and -1 to hit and -1 to wound. So that's really the unit to watch out for here. I think it's a very solid army overall, and that it can play into basically anything. I can see on some tables that it's going to struggle damage-wise against high toughness targets, even though it has all of this extremely high output anti-tank shooting. What you have to remember here is that the army is losing the Predator plus Iron Priest combo as soon as the FAQ comes into effect. My suggestion would be to cut all the Predator Annihilators and add another Gladiator Lancer, which puts you at 2 Lancers. And then with the points that you get over, add another 3-man unit of Thunderwolf Cavalry for additional early trading. So that leaves the Iron Priests in the army, but then it adds another shot to the Lancers instead. So you retain the ranged anti-tank presence that you want. The next army that I would like to talk about is the Genestealer cult Host of Ascension list that is Ines Wilson's brainchild, of course. This is a very solid army overall that has a lot of move blocking shenanigans going on, and it abuses what is the most predictable phase in the Warhammer rulebook, which is the movement phase. So that lets you as a player have a lot of control over the game regardless of what the dice tells you. And it plays 4 20-man blobs of Neophyte hybrids that can pack a lot of punch when it comes in from the reserves. It plays mainly Benefictuses to leverage their damage and increase it, and then 1 Nexus and 1 Primus to improve their damage even more. Then it plays a lot of trash units in the form of Acolyte hybrids, as well as Atlan Jackals and Pearson Genestealers. And remember that these can all be refunded, so he in essence gets 5 more units than you can see here on the army datasheet. Then there's also the Achilles Ridge Hunters in order to improve the AP of shooting units. This army is something that I know he's worked on for quite a bit, and I think it's once again proving that it's a strong and solid choice. Do remember that it's a bit of a meta fit right now due to the less popular melee pushing armies such as Emperor's Children and World Eaters, which is historically a dangerous matchup for Genestealer cults overall, as they really don't like being tagged in melee. And this is a bit of a result due to the popularity of Death Guard. So should they be nerfed, you can maybe see a shift in the meta there, and that could force you to adjust your Genestealer cult build a bit. If you like our content, we would be very thankful if you could subscribe to our YouTube, and so we can delay our financial ruin somewhat. Now, moving over into a list that I think has been covered a lot already on different channels, and on the other hand, I think I do have to mention it as well. And this is from what I understand, a collaborative effort from which you can also tell if you look at the list from at least France, who's also bringing this basically the exact list. The exact same list, and there's also quite similar submissions from America and England, just to name a few. And it's an elder list that can now leverage the datasheets that haven't been nerfed so far, which is mainly in the form of different aspect warriors. And obviously then you go for the aspect host, which in essence gives you reroll hits of ones or reroll wounds of roll. It uses quite a few Phoenix Lords that leads the respective units, and then it uses the extremely strong datasheet in the form of 10-man Swooping Hawk squads that deals a lot of mortal wounds and also puts out quite the punch, especially with the buffs from the aspect host. It also plays 10 fire dragons together with Fugan that can shoot out from the wave serpent and then jump back in every time, which is obviously a very powerful tool to have, and it can basically kill anything. This is once again a very solid army. It also has some early scoring and denial in the form of the Corsair Void Reavers, which are quite a standout datasheet if you look at them for how extremely cheap and fast they are with OC2. And I think the army has play into basically everything. It could become shaky versus like high toughness skews on some tables, but I think overall it's very much a choice you could go for if you just want to trust in your skill and try to win the tournament that way. It could have problems with too pushy armies, but on the other hand, it has access to fight first in the form of Howling Banshees with Jane Sar and a lot of movement shenanigans. It is a bit weak to being tagged though, since it doesn't have access to fallback, shoot, or charge. And then we can move on to one of my favorite players, which is Brian Seipp from America, who has betrayed his Scottish friends to actually play for his home nation once again. And Brian is playing Thousand Suns Grand Coven, which is, I think, honestly a bit of an overhyped army coming into this WTC. But what's very interesting about it is that it plays very much the same game as Thousand Suns did before they got their codex. It leverages Magnus Red quite well and also has access to a lot of damage, and you can leverage that damage pretty much where you want all the time, which is very powerful. And if you think about the army rule, for example, it can almost always guarantee get rerolls to hit against a target. And that's in and of itself just Oath of Moment. So it has like 1/4 of an army rule is already Oath of Moment. So when you think about it that way, it's a very strong build overall. And as you can see here, this is a quite standard list. It has Exalted Sorcerer on disc that's going to go with Sagron Light and with Great Boast unit that can't be shot outside of 18, whereas it shoots 30 in itself. So it's a very strong unit that's going to get to do damage over time. What is also realized here is that the remaining units, they don't even need a leader. You just play them as an 80-point unit. That is way too much damage if you pimp it up with Cabal rituals. Then there's, of course, quite a suit of Rubric Marines, 3 of them with leaders, 1 naked, and he also plays a Rhino to pump up their damage a bit more, some trash, and then he actually plays 2 Mutilith Vortex Beasts, which I think, once again, is something that you should consider adjusting after the FAQ, since the Magnus buff together with Mutilith no longer works. He's only going to be able to pump up the Cable result with 2, so that's something to look into afterwards. On the other hand, you need some way to play for primary and actually stand on objectives early, and Mutiliths are a very good way to get the trading going, so to speak. I think this army has some problems playing against too many Plague Burst Crawlers, for example, and that's quite the boogeyman of the meta right now. But other than that, it's extremely strong, and it's for example very good against the pushy armies that, for example, Genestealer cults could struggle with. And last but not least, a player that I cooperated with quite a bit coming into WTC before I got put myself on some other army instead. But this is Death Guard, and he's playing the sort of inheritor to the index attachment, which is Virulent Victorium, which in my opinion has a weaker detachment rule in the form of stick objectives, but on the other hand, a quite bit stronger stratagem suit as compared to the more popular hammer build. I think this detachment abuses Death Shroud Terminators quite a bit less, but on the other hand, it has a more solid and well-rounded game plan that you can see here. It also has a lot of damage when you come close due to the Plague Marine Bomb that he plays with the Malignant Plague Caster, as well as the Biologist Putrefier, which gives them crit 5s, which means that they have sustained and lethals on 5s, both in melee and shooting. So that unit can basically kill anything if you come close. And that's a good tool to have in your little box. Other than that, he has a Demon Prince, which is sort of a Ghetto Mortarion, if you will. He can take a lot of damage, and it makes your quite strong stratagems cheaper all the time. He plays some Lords of Contagion, obviously, with the Death Shrouds, because that's almost a mandatory unit, and the Talisman for some CP regeneration. Some Poxwalkers for trash, and the sort of auto-include triple threat of the Voted Bloatrons with heavy blight launchers that are just way too cheap, like super pumped exocrines for only 100 points. And then some Mephitic Blight Holders for anti-tank and early skirmishing. I think this army is fantastic into any push list that you could meet. It has a bit of problem trying to push for a differential in any game, actually, because it's hard for it to contest the opposing player's expansion objective in a solid way early, and it mainly comes down to sort of answering your opponent's push throughout the game. If I were interested in this army going forward, I would very much be tempted to try to add Mortarion, perhaps cutting the Plague Marine Blob. I think that sort of helps you play a more varied game in a sense. It's a super cool model with a very strong datasheet rules now. On the other hand, if you look at the meta right now with all of the Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights running around, it's very likely that it catches a lot of stray damage from that. So perhaps when that gets toned down a bit, I would very much look into adding Mortarion again. So that summarizes what I think about the lists for now. If I'm sure I missed a lot of games in the WTC from the submitted lists, but if there's anything you would like me to talk about, then please let me know. Goodbye.